Welcome back to the Radio Academy podcast. I'm your host, Georgy Jamieson, and this week we have the first of our Meet the Fellow series with Kellie While. Kellie was announced as a Fellow of the Academy at the Radio Academy Festival last September. She's an accomplished folk musician who went on to work in radio production, and as the head of creative at 7 Digital, she was best known for producing Radio 2's Folk Show and the BBC Folk Awards. She now runs her own indie production company. I started by asking Kellie about her route into audio production and her love of music.
Yeah, because I guess everyone has a different route into radio, right? And mine is, I don't know how typical my route of radio in, but I guess...
don't think it's that I don't think it's that typical. When I was reading about you, I thought, this is a very interesting journey.
I guess a passion for something leading to a career in it is not that unusual, but in folk music, maybe it is. So, yeah, I grew up, as you said, in a musical family. My mum is a singer. My mum and dad met in the folk club, back in the early 70s in Barrow-in-Furness, where I was born. And yeah, we just grew up, me and my brother would spend summers in the back of the car when my mum and dad were performing at folk gigs and folk festivals, and just grew up with that as very, very central to my life, as have many people of my generation whose parents, there was such a big boom in the folk scene in the late 60s and 70s. So, a lot of the really well-known artists of the last 20 years, people like Eliza Carthy and Kate Rusby and Seth Lakeman. I mean, not that I'm in any way as a performer putting myself in their bracket, no way, but they had similar upbringings, with their parents being really involved in the scene. So I was always wanting to follow in my mum's footsteps and be a singer, which I did from being in my teens to, I'd say, my early to mid-20s. And at that point, I realised this is not going as well as I thought it would. I love singing. It's hard. It is so hard to earn a living as a musician. It really is. And I thought, okay, I love singing, but I don't really enjoy the travelling around. And I'm not sure that I like being away from home all the time. And I'm skint, and maybe I'm always going to be skint. So I should probably look for a proper job. I thought, what am I going to do? And I picked up the phone and rang a man called John Leonard, who had founded an independent radio production company called Smooth Operations, along with another guy called Nick Barraclough. They were producing the Folk Show on Radio 2 at that time. And I thought, that's always looked like really good fun. I wonder if he's got any work. And so I rang him up and he said, well, our receptionist has gone on holiday for 3 weeks. And if you fancied coming in to open the post and, book my train tickets and stuff, then feel free. And that was it. And I never went away. And I was producing the Folk Show within 6 to 12 months. So that was the short version of my route into radio.
That's amazing, isn't it? So from just making a off-the-cuff phone call, going in and doing a bit of admin, bit of reception work, within 6 to 12 months, you're producing the Folk Show on Radio 2. So obviously you've got the folk, background. You love and know the music, but radio production is a completely different skill. So how quickly did you pick that up? Oh, fairly quickly, I should imagine, if you were doing that in such a short space of time.
Fairly quickly. And the company at the time was doing so much. So John had brought the Folk Show, as it was then presented by Mike Harding, which for the first time was produced by an indie from the late 90s, I think. So John was looking after that show, and his business partner, Nick Barraclough, was presenting the country show on Radio 2 at the time. So the company really was founded on this passion for specialist music. So I think in specialist music particularly, knowing the music, understanding, especially in folk music where there is so many different types of folk music and it's such a broad church, having an understanding of that and actually knowing people and all of that stuff, I think in specialist music is really half of the job, understanding how to make a balanced program which features instrumental music and singer-songwriters and artists from Wales and Scotland and America and has a balanced and varied lineup is half the job. And the rest of it I learned pretty quick. We were pre-recording the show every week in those days. And so it was learning how to edit on Pro Tools and, how to record in the studio and how to write links. And I have to say, John and Nick were both fantastic teachers, as were my other colleagues. Our friend Kit Bailey, who I know was working at Smooth Ops at the time, producing the folk show. And so she was great and taught me loads of stuff. Everyone I worked with was amazing. So yeah, it was just a case of, and we were also doing the Folk Awards on Radio 2. We were doing Cambridge Folk Festival. So there was loads and loads of opportunities to learn new skills and to learn how to do every element of the job. Because John's philosophy was, if you want to produce a show, you have to have the idea, sell it, write the pitch, do the interviews, do the editing. It was very much from start to finish. That was how he learned. And so it was a great schooling.
I think that's a really important thing, isn't it? Knowing how to do every process of putting a show together.
Yeah, I don't know now. I couldn't. I couldn't do every process now, but I could then.
But that's a great start, though, isn't it? That's a great schooling, isn't it? If you know how to do absolutely everything from scratch. So when you went into that world of radio and audio, having, this background in that type of music, did you fall in love with radio in the way that you'd obviously always loved playing the clubs and being a musician? Was it a new passion for you?
It was. I mean, I'd always enjoyed listening to radio, but I'd honestly never thought about it being a job or a career or something that I would do, as a profession. It's such an amazing feeling when you create, even if it's just an hour's worth of music on a theme, but when you create something and you spend hours getting it right, and you've written a script and you recorded it and you've edited it and you've mixed it. It is such a fantastically satisfying thing to do. The first time I did that, I thought, I want to do more of this because it felt so good. And at the time, we mostly worked for Radio 2 at Smooth Ops. To be able to have ideas and go to them and try and passionately sell ideas for other things that you wanted to do was great. I loved that part of it as well.
You mentioned the Folk Awards, Radio 2 Folk Awards. Tell me a bit more about that, because you were very instrumental in, heightening the profile of that. I mean, a very big part of Radio 2's calendar.
It was. And when I joined Smooth Operations, the Folk Awards was really in its infancy, in its first couple of years. And I'd attended the Folk Awards as an artist because I'd been working as a singer. In those days, it was a private event. We used to hold it at a conferencing place at the Barbican. There's an old Whitbread brewery called the Brewery, funnily enough. And it was a private invited event only. It was pre-recorded, heavily edited for broadcast, but primarily because it was held on a different night of the week to the folk show, but also because the wine would be very free-flowing and people's speeches would go on for a very long time and sometimes be not suitable for broadcast. And it kind of, I think at a certain point in time, that, having a meal and loads of wine and that private nature of it started to feel as though it wasn't in keeping with, Radio 2 and what it was doing. Yeah. So it was decided that we would become a public event and audience could buy tickets and we would do it live. So that started in, I think it might have been 2011, the first one, 2012, something like that. And it was at that point, really, that I was kind of fully producing the awards with John, working as the exec. So, yeah, it was a really exciting time to be kind of overseeing things. It was massive change. I think it was a good change because it felt more inclusive. Members of the public were in. We had to be incredibly strict with, as you will know, working in events, with the amount of time people were allowed to speak.
Yeah.
And it was a great time to be involved in. And then we took the show to the Royal Albert Hall. We did 3 shows at the Royal Albert Hall of sellout shows. And we took the show to Manchester, Belfast, to Cardiff, all over. And it was wonderful.
Hello, a very warm welcome to the 2017 BBC Radio 2 Folk Awards.
We're going to showcase the very best work by folk musicians from the past 12 months and pay tribute to some masterful artists.
Folk music is really different. It's about words, it's storytelling.
It's my great pleasure to present the Lifetime Achievement Award to Rai Kuda.
How important do you think that those folk awards, opening that up to the public, having that broadcast on Radio 2 as a big live event, how important do you think that was in the explosion of the popularity of folk music?
In terms of a Radio 2 programme, it was really important because the whole way in which you talk about something is, you know, this is happening and you can be part of it, just did have the effect of making it feel very inclusive. I think the Folk Awards kind of had these two values. One, its value to Radio 2, which was as an annual spotlight on folk music, which we've continued to do since the Folk Awards stopped, but in a different way, a chance for the whole network to get behind the music and to showcase some of the fantastic artists that are creating this music. It also had a real value, I think, to the folk scene, which was there aren't many opportunities for folk music to be talked about in the press or given that kind of spotlight. And so the Folk Awards would generate a lot of press, and it would be a great badge for artists to say, you know, it's a fantastic badge to say you're a BBC Radio 2 Folk Awards winner. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was another value to it as well, because there's only an hour a week on network radio of folk music, considering what a huge scene it is, both in Britain but also internationally, which we do feature on the folk show as well. It's not a lot, is it? An hour a week?
No, it's not. No.
As I think as much publicity and however much we can reach out beyond that hour a week to create more of a buzz around the music is really important as well.
So this was all, to start off with, part of Smooth Operations, but then that became 7 Digital. So tell me about that change, because then in 2015, you stepped up and took on a bigger role with 7 Digital.
A number of years before that, Smooth Operations became part of a radio group called UBC, which was an independent company called Unique, which people will remember, which was run by Simon Cole and Tim Blackmore, the late Tim Blackmore. Yeah. And so Smooth Operations became part of that group. And then in 2014, that group then merged with 7 Digital, which was a company doing something quite different. So there was the production business, which had Smooth Ops, Unique, another small indie called Above the Title, and a group called Entertainment News that used to provide showbiz news bulletins for commercial radio. So there's a whole group of us doing that. We merged with 7 Digital, who were they'd started off as a download to own music shop and were in the process of changing into a streaming service, but not a direct to consumer streaming service, a sort of business to business streaming service providing music to clients. So it was a big change because all of a sudden we were part of this much bigger company that was a tech business. I think the idea at that point was streaming services were becoming more radio-like, and there was a real feel that there was an opportunity for the production businesses to all of a sudden create loads of content that we could then sell on to the clients that 7 Digital were working with. But as you know, that kind of change takes a long time to realise. And we did collaborate on quite a lot of bits and bobs, but we operated very much as we always did as a radio business. About 2 years ago, 7 Digital was bought by another company based in California called Song Trader, who are a sync business, again, another music tech business. And Song Trader has a much bigger company and has Bandcamp in its group, which people will know, and another business called Massive Music, who are an audio branding company. And then so we became part of that big group then, but still operating in our own little gang as making radio programs. Yeah.
Tell me some of your highlights from your career so far. What stands out for you?
I guess it's those big passion projects, the things that you are really, really passionate about I'm passionate about everything that I've done, but specific projects, I'll name a few, because everyone producing radio programs knows the types of programs I mean. They're ones that you spend so much time in caremaking. You probably don't make any money at all, even if you don't lose money. But the Folk Awards, big shows at the Albert Hall now are obviously a huge highlight. But I got the opportunity I tell you when it was, I can't remember. I think it was 2020. It was the month before the lockdown happened. Yeah. So 2020, I got the opportunity to go to Boston, America, to spend a day or two with my absolute hero and make some programs with him for Radio 2, and that's James Taylor. So that was a real thrill, because I was brought up on James Taylor. The first gig of my parents, apart from the folk gigs they were playing at, the first proper gig I went to, age about 9, was James Taylor. I've been to see him more than I've been to see any other musician. So that was a real thrill to get to just sit with him in a studio for 2 days and talk about music and record links and make programs. So I have to say that personally is a real highlight. But then there's other things, such as the 21st Century Folk project, which was the project that kind of came in the ashes of the Folk Awards, really. Radio 2 asked us, we're not doing the Folk Awards now, but we still want to celebrate folk music in a huge way once a year on the network. And so we devised this project called 21st Century Folk, where basically we find ordinary working people, often who have extraordinary stories to tell, and we match them up with songwriters who meet them and then write songs based on their lives. And the kind of center point of it all is a video where we call it the song reveal moment, where the songwriter performs the song back to the person who inspired it. And these lovely moments and that's been a real thrill, because that combines everything that I love so much. Great radio, great storytelling, the stories of ordinary people, which is always at the heart of folk music anyway. The creation of new songs, which will be sung probably for hundreds of years going forward.
Dr. Lorne, we've done it, we think, we hope. We've got you a song, and I just wanted to kind of tell you a few things about it, because it's very fast and it's very quick. We kind of wanted to combine your two great passions, your two great beliefs, the NHS and the borough. So we've called the song Dr. Borough. Shall we give it a go?
Do it. Good luck, gentlemen.
Dr. Borough came to town when Jackie Charlton's gang went soaring up the table, and the air some angels sang, and Hickton scored the Holgate Road all full of steel and blood, and Dr. Borough must have thought they'd always been this good. Now come on, Boroughs chanted like a cry to raise the dead, like a welcome for a stranger all wrapped in white and red, and the Eston Hills were standing still, the Tees was rolling home, when Dr. Borough found a town that he could call his own. Sing out high for old St. Nye, sing one thing before we fall. It's Dr. Borough's favourite song. It's only 75 years long. Free healthcare for all.
Tell me about how it felt to be made a fellow of the Radio Academy back in September at the festival. Did you know it was coming, or was it a surprise?
I didn't know at all, and my colleague Nikki Cannon knew and was very good at keeping it a secret from me. I didn't have a clue. I was actually poorly at home when Helen Thomas, head of Radio 2 and chair of the Radio Academy, messaged me to say, was I available to a chat? My first instinct was, oh no, something's gone wrong. What's happened with Pick of the Pops? Because it's very unusual for her to do that quite early in the morning as well. So I got on a video call like this, and she started talking about my kind of achievements and life in radio, and I was completely stunned. I had no idea, and what a thrill! Yeah, it's a real honour to have recognition. I didn't think I was anywhere near being even considered for anything like that. So yeah, I was absolutely delighted.
Tell me about the future, Kelly. What does it hold for you?
Well, I'm sort of no longer with 7 Digital, which is interesting because I've been at 7 Digital or Unique Smooth Operations, one variation of the company or another, for 23 years now. But I can't not work in radio because I love it so much. So I've set up my own company now, which is called Pomona Audio. And I've been very busy setting that up and pitching for programs. And I can't say anything publicly yet, but I'm very, very pleased with how things are going so far. I think the next few years look very promising, and I'm really excited to be doing things in a slightly different way.
A big thank you to Kellie While for being my guest this week. There'll be more Meet the Fellows podcasts to come soon. You have until the 12th of February to get your ARIA's entries in. The ARIA Awards is the big night for the radio and audio industry, and this year we have some new and revised categories. Go to radioacademy.org and click on ARIAs for more details. And put the awards night date in your diary. We'll be at the Odeon Lux in Leicester Square, London on Wednesday the 14th of May. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast, and if you can leave us a review, it all really helps and it's much appreciated. Next week, my guest is radio comedy producer Ed Morrish from Lead Mojo. We'll be chatting about the new Radio 4 series POV, which showcases comedy from social media and online. I'll see you next week.